Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast. This is episode 112. Phil Rabley and Andrew Bobo back behind the mic. And this week we are fortunate to have with us Brandon Herrera, the AK guy, with us as a guest. Before I turn it over to Brandon to introduce himself, I do want to once again take a minute to thank our patrons. Thank you for helping us shoulder the financial load with supporting the show and helping me pay for the bandwidth so it's not coming completely out of my own pocket. If you like what you hear, if it's entertaining, informative, or if you're just a complete masochist, you can become a patron. You can make a monthly donation. It goes straight to the show. It doesn't buy us PMags or any cool stuff. We don't make that kind of money. And if you want to get something for your money, you're welcome to check out our Amazon affiliate links. That goes straight to funding the show as well. And if you do not want to become a patron and you do not shop on Amazon, you can always share the show because Facebook doesn't want my money. They will not advertise the show. They will not boost it. So the only way we reach the audience is if you tell the audience about us. But Brandon, who are you and what is the AK guy?
Well, first off, I just wanted to thank you for having me on here. Who am I? I am a guy who really likes AKs and has committed himself to being an internet court jester for all to hopefully enjoy. The AK Guy is a company that I started a few years back, always with the intent of manufacturing and producing the AK-50. We recently started dabbling in normal AKs. We stand AKs, we builds, custom builds, but realistically, I always had just a couple of projects in mind that I always wanted to get to. And so we've been largely an R&D company, basically, for all the projects that we've been working on.
That's interesting. You're so... Phil told me about you, and so I was looking you up, and it's just interesting, like the AK side of things. You don't hear too much of it because the AR dominates like the customization world. How did you get into, or why did you get into like AK versus AR? Was there a reason behind it?
Yeah, my dad actually got me into it. It was the AK was actually the first weapon I ever shot. I think I was in like third grade, so Dad started me off right, and I just he let me take it back, clean it. I knew how to, and I spent my teenage years, having an AK in my room that I could rip apart, put back together, and knew how everything functioned. And then I later on down the road started building them. I just always had an infatuation with the platform, and so I mean, for me, this was the logical conclusion to that, and I'm just having a great time with it.
So how far? I mean, I know you shot your first AK in third grade. What year was it when you started actually building these things?
18. I started building. Let me actually go back. I started trying to build them at like 16. Didn't work out very well, but I started building for real at about 18, and so that was when it all got started, and I've been doing it ever since.
I've talked to people who've never built an AK before, and I haven't either, but I've seen the process. And like people don't understand that building an AK is neither trivial nor like a spur of the moment decision. I mean, I literally tell people, I'm like, if you're not comfortable working in a machine shop, you probably don't need to build AKs.
Yeah, it's pretty involved. It's definitely it's more of a process than the AR-15 for sure. Which I mean, a good builder can put one of those together at a kitchen table in 15 minutes, whereas an AK is a lot more. It's a lot more blacksmithing than gunsmithing, so to speak. It's very, very involved process with a lot of riveting and pressing and drilling and pinning and hitting shit with hammers and
yes,
yeah.
It sounds kind of fun, actually.
Oh, it is. It's a lot of fun. You just have to be prepared to curse and drink a lot.
Okay, well I got those two down.
And like I said, I mean, I've never built one from scratch, but I mean, even like modifying the Saiga that I have and doing the back half conversion on that and, swapping parts in and out, I tell people all the time, I'm like, even that, when I already had like a pre-assembled, properly assembled barrel trunnion receiver, you still have to grind on and file and hammer. I mean, it's like there's nothing about an AK that at least I've seen where things just like slip together. Everything involves a little bit of manhandling on some level.
Yeah, certain things are easier than others. Different hand guards and muzzle brakes and stuff like that. And little stuff, maybe trigger groups, not too bad. Anytime you're actually like changing a part on the gun, that's an actual functional part. that can get kind of tricky pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think it's why I'm always so impressed by like Magpul and like ALG Defense making like butt stocks and handguards and trigger groups for the gun, because when you look at the variance in all the different countries that made AKs and all the little things that are different between all those designs and all the little differences in tolerances, it's like, how do you make a part for a gun that doesn't have a true ironclad airtight specification? Like everything about AKs is kind of like it's between this and this. It's in the ballpark. It's not like an AR. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's one of those things like you have to accept because that's the rifle. That's how it's designed.
Oh yeah, especially with as many countries made it. So there is kind of a standard. Like I tell people all the time, there is no mil spec AK. Oh, actually, it's the opposite problem. There's like
Well, the problem is there's like 12 mil specs.
bingo, exactly. And so like there are a standard. So like a standard Romanian rifle should be the same as a standard Romanian AKM or a Polish AKM, which is the same as a standard Hungarian AKM. But uh, you get to like Yugos and sometimes like slant cut receivers and different, the Crinks have their own bag of cats. Like everything can, like the tolerances, not everything is mix and match like the AR-15. Not so easily anyway.
Yeah, and I know that drives a lot of people crazy that aren't familiar with AKs. But I mean, it's like I've told people. I'm like, when I left the military, I kind of hung up ARs because I'd been shooting them for a while, and I wasn't really interested in messing with them anymore. And when I got my Saiga, I fell into AKs, and like for the first time, I was like, "Oh, this is what an AK is like," and I really enjoyed shooting the rifle. I mean, it's a fun rifle to shoot. I mean, that was my primary home defense gun for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean,
And like Andrew and I have talked about on the show, I mean, the only reason I really got away from the AK as a primary home defense gun was just because ammo. I mean, when 80 to 90% of your ammunition comes in from foreign markets, it made me a little nervous. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Like the
100%.
prepper in me said, if an executive order could shut down ammo imports and 90% of my ammunition is imported, this makes me nervous.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And so, like the AK guy solution to that problem, not mine, like just the average AK guy's solution to that seems to be, buy a shitload of spam cans and sit on them. And so you get these guys who have, like, I have never seen anybody hoard ammo like AK guys do. I mean, they'll sit on 4 crates of 2,100 rounds of 5.45 and be like, yeah, I could probably use some more.
Yeah, I mean it's it's the truth though. I mean, it cracks me up because every now and then on my local forum, I see somebody like selling a spam can or two, and if you go back through that forum and you do a search for everything that person's posted, it's not the first time they sold a spam can of ammo.
God, no.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you look through all their posts. It's like, how much of this stuff were you sitting on? I mean, it's like every time I got to pay the light bill, sell some ammo.
Oh my god, dude, I have seen some serious hordes. I have seen garages with crates, which are 2 spam cans apiece, stacked 4 deep to the ceiling. Like they don't screw around.
Although to be fair, it was once a lot cheaper to hoard 7.62 by 39 than it is in the current market. I mean, it's still not expensive, but I mean, AK ammo used to be what, like $90, $90 1,000.
Oh yeah, no. Depending on how far back you go, it used to be dirt cheap. It's still, I mean, it's cheaper than 5.56. So I mean, like you can still get it for about 19 cents a round if you're really like looking for deals and stuff. About 19 cents a round. But yeah, the days of getting 1,000 round pallets for 60, $70 are unfortunately long behind us.
Yeah, well, the days of getting any ammo that cheap are far behind us, unfortunately. I did want to ask you about Kalash Bass because you just got back from that literally what today?
Yeah, I just got back into Fayetteville maybe like 10 o'clock this morning, and so I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to get stuff settled down, make sure my shop's not on fire and everything like that, so I could come back here and do this podcast. So it's been a little hectic, but so far I'm enjoying it. You gentlemen are wonderful hosts.
Well, thanks.
You
um,
don't have to lie for our
yeah,
benefit.
But it makes you sound
you're gonna make
really
me
good in front of
blush.
your audience.
Yeah, there. Um, so now is this your full time job as far as doing the AK stuff? Is that what you're doing in the shop? Is that what you're doing full time, or?
Yes. So I have I do all this stuff full time. It's really probably more like two full time jobs, more or less. But I did real estate part time. Um, I do a lot less of it now just because I'm so slam packed. Just with the 50 on the horizon and everything, like pretty much all of my mental energy whatsoever is going, straight into this stuff. So that's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you hit so you it's just crazy. So because you're building your ARs, sorry, you're building custom AKs
Don't be starting any rumors here.
for what's yeah, right? Hey, dropping now just so everybody knows, AK guy became the AR guy.
We talked about doing a run of AR-15s and engraving my logo on the receiver and calling it the Bastard.
Nice. What? So that's just crazy that the market, so many people want AKs that you're just doing it full time. I mean, that's awesome for on your end, but that just amazes me that that many people want that the market is so high, because I didn't think it would be so in demand as far as custom AK goes.
Oh, there's
AK goes.
there's a lot of, and we do our production guns now too, which that helps out a little bit. I don't make a lot of money on those. My big money
Hmm.
maker is kind of like looking forward to the AK-50. There's going to be a little bit of margin on that one, and hopefully the sales will be pretty good. So we'll see what happens on that front. But
Talking about the AK-50, I know Phil. He was. I mean, I think he's probably biting at his nails right now. I was watching the video on it, not just before we started. That is very interesting. Like the AK-50, that just I feel like, I mean, explain it. I mean, I don't even know where to even begin. So, like, where did the thought process come about? Like the road to doing it, creating it and everything, and the hurdles and some of the headaches that you ran into.
yeah, of course. So it started as just kind of a thought exercise. I hadn't been building for that long. I really didn't know as much about the gun, nearly as much about the gun as I do now. And I was just thinking, like, nobody's done this. Nobody's done a 50 BMG AK. Now I know why. It's a little difficult, but I was like, yeah, but this is theoretically possible, right? And everybody I asked about it basically said, no, it'll never be possible. Like you can't do it. And I'm like, oh, uh-huh.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, which I mean, if I was gonna do it just for me. Like I wasn't even thinking production. I wasn't thinking a company. I was thinking like, damn it, somebody's got to do this stuff because I like now it's gonna bother me for the rest of my life. So I was gonna just do a one off, and then some people, some family approached me and a couple of money people, and they were saying like, hey, this is probably something you should look into pursuing. Like you could fund this with the promise of production and actually make some money at it. So that's where it kind of turned into a company thing. And man, it's been a huge learning experience so far. I'll tell you that. I am not the same dumb kid I was 4 years ago when I started.
Yeah, I've actually been following along on YouTube and social media the the odyssey that has become the AK-50. Because I mean, let's call it what it is. A lot of like hardcore gun guys, even a lot of people that are hardcore into the gun world, don't take it upon themselves to do something as psychotic as try to design their own firearm.
Oh, it's absolutely
Almost,
a task of self-loathing.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because like on the one hand, I want to say I want to say it's designed from scratch, but I mean you use the AK-47 and some elements of other firearms really as inspiration, but trying to marry all these things together and then figuring out things like metallurgy and how to design a part so it doesn't shear, and it's a task that would drive a team of engineers insane, and you took it on what, yourself and a handful of people?
Yeah, that's pretty much the size of it. We I'll fill you in a little bit of my background. I was on a pre-law track at Campbell University. I had no engineering experience. I had no metallurgy, machinist background, nothing. I thought CNC machines were still just magical machines that if you get the CAD, you press a button and boom, you got your part. Spoiler alert, that's not how that works. But we've been working at it, and my God, I had to go back. I had to relearn a lot of like college level math. I had to teach myself engineering, like just lock myself in a room with a book for 3 days and kind of like really start learning stuff, talking to as many subject matter experts as I possibly could. Which thankfully, there's a lot of good ones in the industry, and there's a lot of friends that have really helped out on a lot of stuff that have had far more experience. And so I look back at 3 years ago and say, like, Jesus, like what the hell did I think I was doing? Because I'll tell you what, just in the last 3-4 years, I have learned so much, and it's kind of mind blowing.
So, what has the general reaction been? I mean, I know what I know. Mine bordered between this guy is an evil genius and this man is nuts. Because I mean,
Both are probably true. Well, no, the genius part I'll argue, but yeah, both are pretty much on the head.
but I mean, like I said, just my own background. I mean, I by trade when I was in the military, I was a helicopter mechanic, and I've worked as an auto mechanic, put myself through college, and aviation was my first career. So I have a bit of experience with let's call it very high performance things that are trying to kill themselves at all times. But like,
I like that a lot.
yeah, well, I used to work on helicopters, 10,000 parts spinning around an oil leak, waiting for metal fatigue to set in. That's a helicopter. But in spite of all that,
Yeah, by all means, on paper, something that should not work.
yeah, it's like, how do we make a bumblebee out of sheet metal and fiberglass? Oh, I know. We'll design a UH-60.
Jeez, yeah.
But I look at like some of the headaches you've had trying to design this thing. I mean, really simple stuff like we harden these two pieces of metal that rub against each other to the same hardness, so all of a sudden they're galling each other. I mean, like, there's no manual for this. There's no roadmap. There's no blog you read. You literally have to just try it and see how it works. And then when
Yeah,
the parts eat themselves, you have to figure out how to make them stop.
I mean, we it's all trial and error. I mean, because you're right. There isn't a book on how to do this. It's like AK building. Okay, that's been done only what 300 million times over the course of human history. AK-50, zero. Actually, at this point, two, and they were both me. So like, it's very difficult to figure out. Okay, here's a theory of how these parts are going to work, and here's how it should work. Uh, we have no benchmark of any kind. So, best guess, ballpark, this should probably work. We throw it out there, it breaks, and then we redesign it and figure it out. So, like, it really has been a lot of trial and error. And like I said, I just cannot express enough how much of a learning experience it is, because now I consider myself to be, somewhat competent at this sort of thing now. But man, that is not the way it started. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, but put this into perspective. Think about the number of people the two of you can think about that have designed not an AK-50, but a semi-automatic self-loading 50 BMG rifle since World War II. The list pretty much starts and ends with Ronnie Barrett and Mike Serbu and you.
Yeah, Ronnie, Mark, and I think it's a very small club, that's for sure. I think there's
Yeah,
like
I mean, those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head. But I mean, it's a pretty small club. Even
yeah,
if you completely
Pazza was
overlook the
one.
fact that what you've done is you've you've forced a very like cheap, reliable. You've forced a design that the communists designed to do one thing, and you've taken that design and extrapolated this thing from it that is bordering on fairly exotic. Because I mean, let's call it what it is. 15 BMG is not a cartridge you play around with.
Oh yeah, that's a serious. Well, there's two ways to look at it. 50 BMG is a very serious. I mean, I think it's the biggest legally allowable rifle round within like pretty much within reason in the United States. I think it's like that is the benchmark.
Yep.
But it's probably the round that people play with the most, I'd say, round for round out of anything, because like a lot of people just want to buy one and blow up pumpkins once a year with their friends. So like there's two elements to it, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess because I'm also a hand loader, so I mean
Mm-hmm.
when I look at a cartridge, I look at it in terms of like operating pressure and mass and kinetic energy, and anything that drives a 750 grain bullet at 3,000 feet per second is, I mean, it's the benchmark.
It's
Nobody has
proved.
to tell you a 50 BMG has a lot of recoil or makes a lot of noise. That's pretty obvious by the fact that, you can fit like two 30-06 cartridges inside of the case and still have room.
Yeah, you know what? Nothing is as the one thing I have picked up from this project that kind of I guess is surprising and irritating at the same time is I have realized just how few people actually understand how freaking big the 50 BMG is. Because a lot of people are like, oh, so you just used a standard AK receiver, and I immediately know who I'm talking to. Like, you have never seen a 50 cal in real life, because that 50 cal is about 60% the size of a standard AK receiver. Like, it's ungodly big. So they're like, oh, okay, so
Yeah,
how'd you just get a new chamber reamer? I'm like, bro, I wish it was that easy.
yeah. I was about to say you could fit a whole AK receiver inside the AK-50 receiver with room to spare. I mean, just
Oh, well, yeah, hot dog in a hallway.
yeah. I mean, if anybody's curious and has a piece of 50 BMG brass lying around like I do, just hold that above the dust cover of an AK and tell me what you see. Like I don't think you could physically get the cartridge to feed through that receiver. It's not big enough. It's not first. It's nowhere near long enough, but it's not even. I don't even think it's wide enough. I mean,
No, now on top of that, if you've got if you're one of the few who's got a Barrett mag lying around, that's a good half an inch wider than an AK receiver, which is kind of a critical component. Um, it's yeah, I mean, like the size is nowhere, and what people don't understand is that your bolt throw has to be, you have to account for double, so you have to have enough room for bolt lockup, right?
mm-hmm.
And your bolt throw has to be twice as long as your magazine, or excuse me, it has to be as at least as long as your magazine, because that bolt carrier has to travel backward and eject that round and pick up another round, and that mass has to go somewhere. So it's I mean it's long. People don't understand like this sucker has to be big.
I don't know. The only 50 BMG I ever fired was an M2, and
Well, that's a good one.
oh yeah, I told Andrew, I'm like, if you ever get the chance to shoot an M2, just say thank you, shut up, and pull the triggers. Like, I
Yep.
don't care what else is going on in your life. I don't care if you have to like go to your kid's soccer game. I don't care if you're about to go get married. You can be 5 minutes late to the altar to shoot an M2 just once in your life. Don't tell my wife I said that, but it is a life affirming experience, and you feel it in your chest and in your brain.
Oh, it's an immediate adrenaline rush. I did it for the first time a couple years back, and I was lucky enough to have it on video. And my God, there's no more pure joy in the world.
See, it's not just me. I'm not the only one that gets that big stupid grin on their face when they uncork an M2 or even any 50 BMG. I mean, it's like it's raw, unrestrained horsepower in a cartridge.
Yep. Yeah, but then again, you're also talking to a bit of a special enthusiast of sorts. So maybe we're both just kind of crazy.
You, a special enthusiast? I never would have guessed. I thought you just dabbled in this stuff as a hobby.
Yeah, I wish.
Did Putin? Has he called you drooling yet? Like, hey, I'm over here salivating at the AK-50. I need one now.
Well, I haven't. So I've talked to a couple of Russians. Nobody like any real super high up authority or anything. But the biggest thing is that you couldn't get it over there if you wanted to because of the sanctions. Arms back and forth between the U.S. and Russia is not exactly
Right.
super open at the moment. So even if they wanted it, I think it would be a little dicey. However, if they would like to funnel them through Bulgaria, Ukraine, Croatia, I'm open to offers. What happens when it gets to that country is none of my business.
Right. The right amount of money.
That was the joke. ATF, chill out.
Yeah, we're not discussing ITAR violations on the show. I do have to ask because it inevitably comes up, and we have a listener right now who's like gritting his teeth if he's going to listen to this because he's the one that hashtags literally everything. AK suck.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Woo, a fan.
But I have to ask because I mean I like shooting AKs.
Mm-hmm.
Why the AK? Like, why did the AK grab your attention the way it did, and it has held that attention for so long? Because I mean, a lot of people that either were on the receiving end of an AK-47 in a conflict, and as a result, they kind of their perceptions tinted by that, or
Mhm.
people who just don't like AKs, prefer ARs. A lot of them don't see the attraction.
Right, right. Well, a lot of, and I'll start right off the bat with saying the thing that draws people to one side of the fence or the other is way more overblown. The differences are way more overblown than people think. So people are usually drawn to the AK because it's reliable, and they perceive the AR as not reliable, and yeah, basically just plain Jane, boring. Everybody's got one. Now, people on the AR side of the spectrum, they perceive the AK as inaccurate and not modular, and they see the AR-15 as oh, okay, readily available, everything like that. So I think the disparity is a lot less than people think. The AK is far more accurate than most people give it credit for. If you actually use a good barrel, have a good shooter that's not doing the Iraqi shitter position over a barricade, it's a pretty competent weapon platform. And like on the other side of the fence is true, like the AR-15. Like once you got out of Vietnam, pretty damn reliable platform. And they've really kind of worked out a lot of the kinks pretty early. So I think a lot of people are overblown to one degree or the other. Like I have no hatred for the AR-15. I think it's kind of the fanboys on both sides can be a little vitriolic for my taste.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I
and and I think a lot of my perspective on the AK versus the AR is because I mean I've tried to immerse myself in a lot of like the history and the design ethos between the two rifles, because my perspective has always been that the only reason the two rifles are compared directly to each other is because they literally shot at each other in multiple
Mm-hmm.
conflicts. But other than that, they weren't really designed to do the same thing. I mean, the AR was designed, wasn't designed to be modular. First of all, it's been made modular over the years, whereas the AK really hasn't seen that big push towards modularity except in maybe the last 10, 15 years. Whereas the AR's just been pushed along down the path of modularity for a longer period of time. But it's like I tell everybody, I'm like, you have to understand that the AK was built to be used by barely trained peasants. It was built to replace the SKS and the PPSH. So it's like one half submachine gun, one half carbine, and it was built to be used with minimal maintenance. And it's like I tell everybody, it's not that the AK requires no maintenance, requires no lubrication, requires no cleaning. It's just the fact that it
Even though I
tolerates.
treat it that way.
Yeah, and which drives me nuts, because I'm that neurotic sort that every time I take a rifle out to the range and shoot it, it comes home and gets cleaned out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get this thought process of it's an AK or it's a whatever, so I throw it in the closet dirty and leave it there. I don't do that. But I tell everybody, I'm like, you have to understand that when this was designed, the understanding was we're going to give this to people who are literally going to store it outdoors in the rain, and it has to work no matter what. Like, you can store and neglect AKs for 10, 15, 20 years, and they'll still, within reason, do what they're supposed to do. ARs don't react well to that level of neglect. It's not that it's an unreliable firearm, but it's that take the two rifles and neglect the hell out of the two of them, and the AR is going to pack it up a lot sooner than the AK.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And
if you
there's certain mechanical aspects to that. Like the AK is so ruggedly analog. Is the only word I've got for it. Is just it's very crudely mechanical in the way it works. That like once that gas goes to that piston, which is like a travel distance of like an inch maybe, um, that train has left the station and that bolt carrier is flying back. And there's a chunk of metal. There's no springs. There's a chunk of metal in the way that ejects the round out the side, smacks steel, and tosses it out. Like it is, there's just such raw mechanical function to it that the reliability is just basically guaranteed for a lot of reasons.
well, that, and I mean, if you look at a lot of like the South African conflict rifles, you're talking about rifles that haven't seen an armor and haven't seen parts changed in probably 20 to 30 years. But if you look at like the lockup surfaces on the Bolton and the Trunnion, they've got so much meat to them. They're so, I don't want to say overbuilt, but you know what I'm saying? Like your locking surfaces in the rifle are so large.
Mm-hmm.
If if they're properly machined in headspace in the first place, and if
Bingo.
they're made out of the right material, you've got so much margin for error that if the gun is in service for 20 or 30 years, it's not going to shear a lug.
And I'm really glad you made that clarification there, so
Yes,
I didn't have
that's
to be a broken
necessary.
record.
Look, I beat that drum so much with AKs because whenever somebody tells me, like, oh, my Century AK did this and the other, I'm like, you haven't shot an AK. Please stop.
Yeah, you shot
Please stop.
something that kind
Don't
of
do that.
looks like one.
Yeah, and admittedly, maybe I'm spoiled because I have a Saiga. And if Ishvex doesn't know how to screw together an AK, we might as well throw them all in the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many. Oh, it's depressing. I don't even want to get into it. I beat that so I'm yeah, kind of a broken record about it, but man, it's so not hard to just do things the right way. I have no idea why people struggle with it so much.
What I mean, now I've shot AKs here and there. I've never owned one. I want to own one. I'm more of the aspect of I'm a gun collector, and so I just want all the guns. And so I want to get an AK. I mean, I would love to build one, or assemble one, I guess. But for somebody who's I've never really looked into buying one too seriously. I mean, where should I start? Like, what should I look for? Should I get a Saiga? What's the best thing to do if I'm interested in looking at either parting one out or buying a full one?
So with AKs, it's probably easier to go down a list of things that you don't want, and odds are 9 times out of 10, if it's not in that list, you're probably going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
One thing right off the bat you want to avoid is American. Probably at this point, anything American made is going to be utter trash. Um, there's a couple of people right now that are making some modifications to some stuff, and they're trying to get their quality better. But as it stands, I've yet to see in any American made AK, not American built, but American, every single part made in the USA that wasn't an absolute piece of garbage and was literally dangerous to shoot if you were going to take it into a 5-digit round count. So after that, I mean, all like the Romanian imports are usually pretty good. Just make sure your sights are straight and the rivets are looking good. As long as the rivets look good, it head spaces, and the sights are straight, 9 times out of 10 you'll be okay, as long as it's not American. Because American-made guns can look really good, and it drives me freaking crazy because you hear people go like, "Oh, but like I got this IO, and my God, the finish looks so good." It's like, dude, phosphate does not a gun make. Like your trunnions are still made out of like Play-Doh baby shit, so it really doesn't matter if your Cerakote looks good, you know?
Yeah, and that's I know that's been a big issue of contention in the AK world because I mean we've kind of gone through a lot of U.S. manufacturers trying to cheat the system and cast these parts when these parts I don't think can be made cast. I mean the forces involved in them and the way they're designed and the amount of space they take up, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to realize that casting pound for pound, forging is going to make a stronger part than casting. You can make a cast part every bit as strong as a forged part, but you can't do it for the same weight. I mean,
Yeah.
look at a Ruger revolver and a Smith & Wesson revolver, and you'll see a real critical difference in the top strap, for example. Because I like Rugers, but I'm forced to admit the Rugers are chunkier. The top strap's a fair bit thicker, and they're heavier. But it has to be because it's a cast frame. You can
Yep.
make a Ruger that will take all kinds of crazy abuse, but you couldn't take a carbon copy of a Smith and Wesson revolver with the same dimensions and that forged frame and cast the frame and get the same strength. And that's what American manufacturers I think have tried to do is they try to literally carbon copy the parts and the dimensions, but they try to make them cast, and you can't do that. I mean, a friggin' first year engineering student will tell you that's a stupid idea.
Yeah, and I mean, design matters because like people are like, "Oh, well, casting is fine because like yeah, Ruger. Oh my God, Ruger is they're the bane of my existence just because they cast their shit and it's fine. Um, where they're like, oh, their frames are cast on their pistols. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's a pistol. Okay, first of all, no lockup. And they're like, well, the Mini 30 has a same round, but the receiver's cast. And I'm like, yeah, look at the design on a Mini 30. The lug is the whole frickin' receiver. Like, you got like 6 inches of lug. On the AK, you got like maybe a quarter inch. Like, design matters. Like, casting is not a casting is not a casting. Like, it really matters what the hell you're casting and what kind of pressure is being applied to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that'd be self-explanatory, but apparently there's a bunch of engineers that work for U.S. gun companies and know better, or at least they figured out how to sidestep the laws of physics one way or the other. But I mean, that's Andrew and I did an episode on AKs probably a year ago, and that was a lot of the advice I gave him was stay away from the U.S. manufacturers because their track record has been less than impressive. And beyond that, I mean, some of the MPAPs and the OPAPs I've heard had less than properly heat treated
Mm-hmm.
receivers. You get like Wassers that every now and then you'll see canted front sights, although the design of the front sight is such that if it is canted a little bit, you can still zero it. It just
Right.
looks ugly. But, I mean, I guess that's always been my point with AKs is that in this world, you can buy a $600 AK that is an infinitely better rifle than a $900 AK. And people don't, that makes no sense to them, but it comes down to, do you want the pretty finish or do you want the raggedy old Helga that's been sitting in the corner rusting, but she's built right.
Right, right. And a lot of that price point is like only on the used market now because people are finally like the surplus has officially dried up, period. Just about across the board. The surplus is gone. And so people are they're really bitching about the price of the AK right now because people are finally having to pay what it costs to build the damn thing. Because before it was always all the tooling was paid for by the Soviet government, and if you hated America and you hated capitalism, they gave you a $50 million worth of forging and tooling and all sorts of stuff so you could build the damn things yourself. And now that that's all dried up, I mean, people are there's no such thing as a damn $300 AK anymore. It's not feasible. Uh, Now I mean, forging is expensive. Proper heat treat is, it's, well, that part's not all that expensive. Really, I wish other people would do more of that. That's a pretty good thing. But making all this stuff like hammer forged barrels, like these are not cheap parts to make, and there's millions of dollars of investment that have to go into it. And so, yeah, what people are just they're not used to paying it.
And I think that's a lot the comparison I try to draw between like an AK and other firearms people may be more familiar with, or the perception is I'm willing to pay X amount for another kind of gun, but I wouldn't pay X amount for an AK. And I'm like, okay, if a company came out tomorrow and they were selling M1 Garands, brand new production, all new parts, made to exactly the same spec as a World War II M1 Garand, what would you think that thing would cost? And once you get past the people that think it costs $600 to build one of those, who are just like, I don't even know how to tell you how far out the ballpark you are. But when you get past that, you get into people that are like, oh, it'd probably be like a $2,000, $2,500 rifle, maybe $3,000. People who understand that that was a firearm that was designed at a time when everyone that worked in a gun factory was an experienced gunsmith and tradesman because you had to be to make the guns to the level of tolerance they had to be at that time. But you also consider the fact that these guns were filled with forged parts. I mean, the M1 Garand, as an example, was not a cheap gun to manufacture.
Hmm.
It wasn't designed to be. It was always designed under the idea that Springfield Armory or a professional, well laid out manufacturing firm was going to build these things. And I tell everybody like, but the AK is the same because the AK was only designed about 10 years after the M1 Garand was. It was never designed to be built in a garage or on a kitchen table. It was never designed to be built by a home gun
Oh,
enthusiast. It was designed to be built by an industrial estate.
most people don't understand exactly to what degree that's true because if you ever look at the Soviet facilities, they're cities. Like, they are literally cities with their own daycare and restaurants and big giant housing facilities and shit like that. Like, they had to be cranking out millions of AKs. And that's the other funny part, is that wars, or at least the threat of war, um, does a crazy thing called quantity. So instead of cranking out I think I can sell 20,000 guns a year on the civilian market. You're like, at any moment, 50,000 Americans are going to come over that hill. I need 2 million AKs in the next 3 months. That's the sort of quantity that, all of a sudden millions of dollars of tooling and setup cost is amortized out into hundreds of millions of AKs. And so your tooling is negligent compared to what it would be for any sort of quantity to make it here.
Yeah, and I guess going down this road, it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but I really think it's an important part to understand why the cost cutting measures have been so viciously implemented in U.S. made AKs. Because unlike foreign countries where you have communist labor, you have to pay people minimum wage in this country, and if you want half decent,
Unless you're Bear Creek
well,
Arsenal.
and oh God, you went there. Yes, you did. We're never going to get them as a sponsor.
Oh yeah, sorry. They're right down the road from me, so I get to pick at them a little.
Yeah. Well, since we kind of segued into it, what separates the AKG 47 from the rest of the pack? Because I've seen you started kind of on under your own brand, the AK guy. You've started building AKs.
Right, correct.
What makes them special?
So with our AKs, realistically, people are like, oh well, people would probably assume it's an opportunity to cash in or whatever, but I really don't make that much money off each one of these guns. Like the margins are pretty damn slim. Like we can't even afford to do dealers. Like the margins are that damn slim. But it was entirely to get our name out there, to get the AK guy brand attached to a quality rifle at a decent price. So they're $8.99. Which people are like, oh well, you can get a Wasser for $400. Like, first of all, yeah, that was true in 2007. But nowadays, they're available for like $6.99. So like, what's the extra $200, right? Because the Wasser is kind of like the gold standard of the poor boy AK, for lack of a better word, right? So what we do to it is everything's built in the U.S. on forged Romanian kits. So fully forged parts, fully virgin parts. They're not commercial parts. They're military parts. Where the Wasser is commercial. These are forged military kits, hammer forged barrels, built properly in the U.S. Better QC, I would think, than Ivan in Romania. And we Cerakote it. We build it on a real receiver that has actual magwell dimples. That's one of the things that drives me crazy about the cosmetic of the Wasser, is that they didn't stamp it with a magwell dimple. They just have a little plate spot welded inside. And so that kind of kills the AK aesthetic for me. So we have real receivers with real magwell dimples and everything like that. And we ship it with a Tango down grip and all sorts of different little upgrades, polished fire control group. But we really just actually give a shit about the product that we put out, because that's the entire reason we put it out, is so that we're attached to something that runs well.
And I got to be honest with you, all somebody has to do is YouTube how to build an AK and sit through all that, and then tell me you can make profit at $8.99 at an $8.99 price point doing all that with raw material costs. It sounds pretty freaking reasonable,
and
especially
that's
when you
not even
compare.
including excise tax. Excise tax is
Oh
the
God,
one big shark out there that nobody takes into account. Is that any weapon manufactured in the U.S. that's sold on the civilian market has an 11% excise tax. You are charged 11% of what your sales price is, which is a really nasty self-fulfilling prophecy, because you got to raise the damn price to account for excise tax, which raises your tax, so you got to raise it again. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah. So for the audience, think about it like this: the next time you go and you spend $1,000 on a rifle, or if you're buying $1,000 handguns, you're definitely not in the price range I'm in. But the next time you go spend $1,000 on a firearm, just think about the fact that you just cut a check for $110 to the U.S. federal government to do whatever they do with it.
More or less. Yeah, which God knows what the hell that is, but yeah.
Yeah. So your $890 rifle is lining a pocket someplace in DC.
Yeah, please don't make me think about that math. It's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I work in the finance business, so running numbers in my head is kind of what I do all the
Oh
day.
yeah, no. I love money math. I just hate money math when I'm thinking about how much I'm forking over to ATF.
No. Okay. Now I got two more things, and then I'm gonna start poking Andrew for things to hurl at you. But
No worries.
Here's the eternal debate in AK land:
Mhm.
5.45 or 7.62.
So, in a vacuum, I like 5.45 better. Nice flush shooting round. The recoil impulse is super manageable. Devastating round, especially the 7.6 stuff. Devastating. Still very cheap, very affordable. Just baller round. I would choose it over the 5.56 any day. But the problem is now availability after the 7.6 import ban and everything being what it is, and price of AK-74 kits going through the roof in the last year or so. I got to choose the practical choice in 7.62.
Yeah, and I'm kind of stuck in 7.62 just because when I got an opportunity to buy a Saiga for $400, like 4 months after the import ban, it
Jesus.
was a 7. Yeah, tell me I didn't jump on that one and wrestle it to the ground fast.
Yeah, I would have slapped the gun out of Granny's hands to get that one.
It was actually my father-in-law. He just casually mentioned, "It's like, yeah, I'm thinking about selling my Saiga," and I was like,
How
"How
much you
much?"
want? I mean, hey, I'm interested in checking it out.
Oh no, I told him flat out, like, just how much you want, and he quoted me a price, and I was like, "I'll have cash for you in a day or two."
Nice, nice.
Like, no haggling, no questions asked, no, don't want to inspect it, just give it to me. Because and I tell Andrew all the time, I'm like, go and look at what used Saigas are going for. If you can find one for under $650, like unmolested, not abused, not hacked up, just buy it because they're never going to go down in price. Which always cracks me up because
Yeah, that's the
you have
important
so many of the hardcore AK guys that hate Saigas because, like, oh well, you got to convert it, you got to do this and the other. I'm like, yeah, but any other gun you buy, the first thing I mean, people go out and buy a $500 brand new Glock, and the first thing you do is rip off the friggin' sights, the trigger, and the magwell, and 15 other parts. So what does it matter that you have to convert it or work on it? Like, I don't see how that's a bad thing.
Which I mean, and you could just take it to a competent AK Smith and have them do it too. I mean, it's really it's not if you especially if you got the specialty tooling for it, it's really not bad. So you're ending up. I mean, if you pay somebody, including parts, like $300 to do a full Sega conversion, you're still ending up with a $700 rifle from Russia that kicks ass. You know.
Yeah, and that you can confidently say was built correctly and runs right.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is unfortunately more than you could say for a good piece of the market.
Regrettably. And now I have to ask because I've been curious for what backstory I don't already know about your Instagram account that got nuked. Like I
Yeah, so that happened a little while ago. I ended up getting my account taken down. It was like 22,000 followers, I think, 23,000, something like that. I try not to think about it. And, I ended up getting it. My business partner called me first thing in the morning. He's like, hey, bro, can you log into your Instagram? I'm like, try it. No. He's like, dude, I think your account got nuked. I'm like, okay. So I went to check it out, and sure enough, they said I violated terms and conditions or something like that, and I'm immediately thinking like Instagram censorship. But funny enough, here's the plot twist. I get an email from a guy claiming credit for taking the account down with a screenshot of a successful report. And yeah, so from what I was able to gather, it was actually a 4chan attack. Like there was just some random prick on 4chan that just decided for no reason he was going to try to, report the shit out of my account.
and there's been no response from Instagram about like reinstating it or even a response about like what got reported or what policy you violated.
Not at all. But I will say this: I talked to some people on that kind of work around Facebook with Facebook and by proxy Instagram, and they said that um, basically what most likely happened is some they reported a bunch of for gun content, private sale firearms, whatever the hell their thing was. Probably had like 20 burner accounts, so they got a lot of reports on it, and from that point it was right after the mosque shooting, like a day or two later. And so they said everybody in Silicon Valley was probably super freaking sensitive about gun content for that week. So I kind of got screwed by timing.
Well, it sounds to me like you kind of got screwed by a social media platform that doesn't feel the need to honor an agreement they've made with the content creators. I mean, this has been a gripe that Andrew and I have bitched back and forth up one side, down the next. Because I mean, like I said at the top of the show, the only way that my show or our show gains additional listeners is by word of mouth, because I've been down that path of trying to get Facebook to let me advertise and let me boost posts or let me do something.
Oh, hang it up.
Yeah, well, get this. This is the part that really made me chuckle. The specific reason given was that the podcast and its associated website promotes the sale of firearms, which at least most reasonable people would interpret to say that I sell firearms, or like I post links to Brownells where you can buy firearms, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually appealed it and like wrote out a nice, nice, reasonable, not Phil like message, and basically just said, we're a pro Second Amendment show. We promote law abiding citizens owning firearms for their own protection, but we don't post links or quote promote the sale of firearms. Like, you can't find a link anywhere on my website, or anywhere in the show notes or anything where you can go buy a freaking firearm. So
Oh, no, they don't give a shit.
yeah, well, and they literally came back like two more times, said, well, your show promotes sale of firearms. And I finally lost it and just wrote them back and said, if me being in favor of people indulging in their constitutionally protected rights means I'm promoting the sale of firearms, then I'm guilty as charged. I won't bother you anymore. So that's been 2.5 years.
Yeah, no, they just have some poor lackeys in a room somewhere in a big tech support building that are going through 100 of those every minute. They glance at it. Yep, shit, that's a gun, and then they knock it out.
Yeah, but I personally find that very infuriating, because to me, my point of view, and the same thing I've told Andrew, because we're both very ardent libertarians on top of everything else, and I've always said
You're
that,
in good company.
huh?
You're in good company.
Yeah, but my point has always been, if Facebook came down hard and said, call it what you will, no conservative content, no gun content, no this, that, or the other, fine.
Yep.
We'll go find another platform. I mean, MeWe's kind of like struggling to get themselves in order, but I promise you that if all gun content was erased from Facebook tomorrow, every bit of it, we would find a home someplace, somewhere, some platform would step up and say, now that I can get the market cornered on this, I'm going to commit resources to it. I'm going to make this work, because that's the way the free market works. If you see a hole in the market, you're going to jump in with both feet.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's just kind of weird when it's so touchy, though. Like, I'd be surprised if anybody in Silicon Valley would do that. The only one that I hear is actually pretty decent is like Twitch, because it's owned by Jeff Bezos, who's not a fan of guns, but from what I can gather, he's a pretty big proponent of free speech, which, hey, I mean, I almost respect that more. It's one thing to be a conservative, and yes, I want to shelter conservatives. It's another thing if you don't even like the person, but you respect their speech enough to say, like, hey, I don't like it, but yeah, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do.
yeah, and I mean, even that's something I can get on board with. I mean, it's I don't know. I was actually just looking at show notes for This Week in Guns, because I'm going on that show tomorrow. But apparently, there's a bit of legislation being passed around right now in the Texas Senate that's trying to criminalize social media platforms from censoring conservative content. And it's like, on the one hand, I kind of agree with that, but on the other hand, I get really nervous about giving the government that kind of power.
Mm-hmm. Because
I mean,
that is a slippery slope if I ever saw one. The biggest thing is, like, okay, it's your platform. I can't go into your living room and start bitching about politics, and then you tell me to get out, and I'm like, no, I've got the First Amendment. It's like, no, the First Amendment, the only thing that does is it says that the government can't throw you in freaking jail for speaking your mind. That's the only thing that does. When people try to extend that to private platforms, I get a little hazy. But on the other hand, if you're trying to tell me Like, don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining. If you're trying to tell me that you've got a free and open platform, and as long as we follow these rules specifically, we'll be okay, and then you screw me over, that's not cool.
Yeah, and I think that's always kind of been the avenue I try to direct people down is I don't think this is not a First Amendment issue. What I do think this might be is like a consumer protectionist issue or
Hmm.
even like breach of contract because when we as content creators put content out into the wild some kind of way like in my case the podcast costs X amount per year to run and the podcast host is charging me for that so I'm paying for that but in the case of like Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, you're not paying to host the content. They're hosting ads on it. I mean, your content is what brings people to the platform so they can put ads up in front of them so they can make money.
Hmm.
So I look at it as this should be a symbiotic relationship where you put up content that brings me traffic so I can make money. And as a result of that, when they breach that weird contract where you can put up this content, I'm going to make money on it, and they say, well, you can't put up that content. You know what I'm saying? I guess that's where my mind always goes. It's like there's got to be some kind of a breach of contract situation here where a really smart lawyer can make a case and say by making your standards so ambiguous and by enforcing them so in such a hasty manner, you've breached contract with your own content creators.
Yeah, and there's also a distinction that is pretty useful to be made that there is a difference between the First Amendment and free speech. The First Amendment covers free speech, but free speech has a lot of boundaries outside of what the First Amendment covers, if that makes sense. So, like, if you're claiming to be, in favor of free speech, and then you censor this stuff, and especially if you, I think that is the thing that grinds my gears, so to speak, the worst is that they do have very specific guidelines, and then it's a Darth Vader moment, for lack of a better word. I have altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it further, and we just kind of have to shut up and take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's always my greatest irritation. It's not the censorship so much as it is tell me where the line is so that if I cross it, I know I crossed it.
Well, the problem is that they move the line. They move the goalposts so
Yep.
often and so much. Like they'll sit there and I mean, YouTube does it all the time. Is they'll sit there and they'll change their terms of service, and all of a sudden you'll see, I mean, a handful of gun channels get nuked. I mean, you'll see like Hickok. I mean, he got slammed. You have like Demolition Ranch. I mean, that's one of the biggest channels that it's out there right now, and that guy he has multiple channels, but he like purposely like I mean, if something is like he's trying to if he does a crossover of any kind, go if it crosses over, he will blur it out. He'll do something like he'll try to do whatever he can because he doesn't want his off the ranch channels to get demonetized because of the fact that it showed a gun because he has another channel called Demolition Ranch. And
Yeah, well,
I mean, he's
Military Arms
gotten, and
Channel has
he's,
dealt with it. Never Enough
yeah,
Ammo has
military.
dealt with it.
Oh, yeah. And so, and that's the problem is these companies, these social media platforms, they know what they can get away with. They know that honestly, they can sit there and say, "Oh, guns are bad," and a good majority of people who really are on there and I mean are going to champion them for that. I mean, you see them all the time that, "Oh, we're going to take a stance against this," and I mean they get basically. I feel like the government just or the left wing anti-gun group, so they send them more money because you're doing our bidding, okay. Uh, and so you're gonna see it, and it's sad because I don't think you're gonna ever see it stop unless we start as a gun community, we start leaving YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and going over to a different platform that works.
And see, I'm hesitant to embrace that idea for one reason because I had a conversation with somebody literally just the other night, and their whole gripe was that there's too many internet advocates. You know what I'm saying? Everybody just talks on Facebook, and that's not real advocacy. You got to go stand in front of your local. You have to go stand in front of your local magistrate's office and preach in the streets, or you're not a real gun advocate. And my point of view is, I'm like, no, I'm a gun advocate because I preach everywhere. at the dinner table, at my workplace, at the DMV, everywhere I am, I'm an advocate. I don't say, well, this isn't a gun friendly place, so I'm not going to go here. I say this isn't a gun friendly place. I'm about to make somebody
Yep.
uncomfortable because I advocate everywhere. So I guess my point of view is we're not welcome here. That's obvious. I'm not going anywhere until they kick me out. And when they do kick me out, I'm going to come back with a fake account and make them kick me out
Yep.
twice. We can't abandon the social media platforms because we're not wanted. That's all the more reason to be a thorn in their ass and stay. Because
I
if
agree.
if they're kicking us out, it's because we are threatening them in some kind of way. And that's all the more reason to stay and play their game and fight their fight. And just to see just how long we can claw on to stay on Facebook and stay on Instagram and how many different accounts we can open to stick around because they don't want us around.
110%. And the one of the biggest things that I think is super important that a lot of people miss, and a lot of people like are on the other side of it. It drives me freaking crazy. Is they say, we need to be more responsible with guns, and we need to do, this, and preach safety all the time and preach advocacy all the time. I'm like, you guys are like, just like all gun content on the internet has to be pro 2A. I'm like, you guys are retarded. Like, the biggest thing that you can do online, especially with the new generation, is have fun. Like, don't be an idiot. Obviously, be safe and everything like that, and be free to speak your mind. But if the biggest thing that people lack nowadays in the internet environment is good examples of guns being used, because the average person only thinks of bad things when they think of guns. They're like, okay, obviously, yeah, I don't want my kids around that. Yeah. Okay, so when the legislation comes up, they're like, well, yeah, okay, well, that's obvious. Guns, gangs, violence, school shootings, done. But if you get as many good examples where shit's funny, or people are having fun, or enjoying the sport, or just having a good time, that kind of infiltrates that. And they're like, well, there's people enjoy it. I enjoy it, stuff like that. We need more good examples of positive uses of guns.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, and that's why, like, that's where, like, FPS
Yeah.
Russia. That's why he took off so much, because he was just a dude, kind of just threw a crazy, I guess, somewhat Russian accent on, and he just blew crap up, and that's what people want to see. And that's why, honestly, going back to Demolition Ranch, like, I think that's why that guy, he's so popular. Like, his show, or his YouTube channel, is him just he blows things up with guns.
I'm pretty sure those two YouTubers right there have minted more first-time gun owners than anyone in the NRA combined.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I highly agree. And that's the thing, is like, and that's what with the internet, as much as it is, it's more, I think it does more positives than goods in a way. But like, anybody who's interested in a firearm, they can go out and do any amount of research, even if they have no friends that are into it. They can go out and do research and learn on their own via the internet.
As long as they stay off of
And,
ARFCOM, because Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
and that's the thing, is like, Instagram, there's a lot of pro gun, a lot of gun content on Instagram. I'm still trying to figure out how to grow mine, and it's crazy the amount of work that you have to put into it. It's a business.
Yeah, I got pretty good at it for a while.
I'm sure shoving Twinkies in the back of AK receivers didn't hurt.
Yeah, like I was pretty good at Instagram while they let me have one.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to have links in the show description, but anybody that hasn't checked out Brandon's his Instagram and his YouTube account really should, because some of the crazy crap you do on that show is just. It's like when I'm scrolling through my subscription on YouTube and I see your stuff pop up, I don't even have to look at the channel name to know it's you.
Well,
Because it's like train the AK way, and there you are guzzling vodka while shooting an AK, or the Will It AK series, where you cram like what, gummy bears, Twinkies, dirt, everything but cement apparently into the back of an AK and then see if it'll
Next
fire.
episode, we're going to do Flex Seal. That seems to be a really popular one. People recommend Flex
Oh
Seal.
my god, no, you're not.
Yeah, we'll see if Flex. I don't even know what the hell Flex Seal is. I've seen the damn Billy Mays style commercials, but I don't know what the hell it is. But I'm going to buy a bottle of it and we'll see what happens.
Are you going to let it cure before you try?
I think that would probably be fair.
You're
Or
gonna
let
have
it
trouble.
shoot,
Oh, we'll see what
or
happens.
let it shoot as
It's-
it cures.
It basically cures into like silicone. I mean, like a rubber that's that consistency. It'll be like having the world's biggest recoil buffer in the back of the AK.
Gnarly. Well, let's. That's the only thing I got. Like, oh, let's see what happens.
This is why I say everybody has to go watch his channel.
Right. And that's the thing is, though, is like that's what people really. That's what I mean. Gun enthusiasts and really, that's what they want to see. Is they want to see people just blowing stuff up and having fun, and I mean, and it's entertainment. And the media and the anti-gun crowd have spent decades pushing a non-entertainment factor with a firearm. Like they're by their thought process, there's no entertainment value in it at all. It's purely made for killing. And these channels like yours and everything, and what Phil and I are trying to get across is no, it like go outside and shoot a round. I mean, just even if you want to, just shoot as fast as you can a 30 round mag. And if you're not smiling, I'm going to slap you because you're going to smile. I've never seen someone not smile after just unloading a mag full of ammo. And it's fun. I mean, it brings people together. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, I mean, shooting with friends and BSing and everything. And like that, to me, and that's what Phil and I mean, you and every other channel, like the pro gun channels out there and everything. That's what really, I think we're slowly starting to bring it back is no, it's like guns do have, like, if you're safe with it, like, and I mean, shoving gummy bears and stuff in the AK-47, I mean, some people may not see that as safe, but it's entertainment and it's shock value. But I mean,
yeah, like as long as I consider safe, like not violating the 4 rules.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, that's what the same thing with me. And I mean, people are going to look at it and be like, oh God, he's not being safe. Well, no. Okay. Is he pointing at anybody? No. Okay. Like he knows what's downrange and beyond his, after his muzzle. Like and that's what people are slowly, I think, starting to understand, because you're seeing like the record numbers of some of these channels hitting some just crazy numbers as far as subscribers go and growing. And I feel like it's slowly in an uptrend as far as, you know what I mean? Like it's going in the right direction, I think. Shootings don't necessarily help at all. But I think it's going in a better trend than it did in the last probably decade or two.
Yeah. As long as you can offset it, that's the biggest thing. Is like the YouTube channel on average now reaches about 60,000 people a day, and so that's, I mean, if out of that 60,000, maybe conservatively 500 of them is the first time they've seen any content like that, right? Maybe less. Maybe let's say 100 people a day. First time they've seen any sort of positive gun content, because there's a lot of spillover from like the gaming community and comedy videos and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the first time they've ever seen somebody actually handle a machine gun and not go shoot up a school with it, they go out and they're having a good time and like they're being safe and nobody got hurt, and damn, that actually looks like a lot of fun, and this guy was pretty funny. Like that's the sort of shit. 100 people a day, like that's the sort of advocacy that people need, that I think a lot of the gun community is sorely lacking, at least lacking the perspective to understand that that's important.
Yeah, and I think I might be partially guilty of that because Andrew and I had talked about firearms ownership, and maybe it's maybe it's my perspective or the way I was raised, but I mean, for me, every gun's a home defense gun. These are all serious things. I don't go to the gun range because I'm trying to have fun most of the time. Sometimes I'm just going to blow off steam, but like in my little world, these guns all exist to protect my family. And maybe that's my own blind spot that I don't push. Hey, it's actually kind of fun to shoot. and make it a little more
Yeah,
lighthearted.
and I mean, there's multiple perspective. Like this is one of those things where like not everybody, multiple people can be right at the same time. You know, a gun can be self defense, and it can be a sporting rifle, and it can be a I like to blow up pumpkins in my backyard, or and it can be a like there's so many different. The fact is that if you have at least one of those boxes checked, we're on the same team. You know.
No, that's a fair point. Does anybody have anything to throw into the pot before we start tying this one up? I got another podcast to get to in about a half hour, and I got to check in with my wife before I wind up single before then.
Um, no, I mean I got nothing. I guess Brandon, where can they find you?
Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate being on. I have to go too. I've got to wrap up some stuff. I'm still kind of like knee deep in stuff after getting back from Texas. But you can find me on YouTube under Brandon Herrera. If good luck spelling that, and the real Brandon Herrera on Instagram now. So yeah, that's those are pretty much where I'm spending a lot of
And
my
then
time on social
your
nowadays.
your company there, it's the AK guy.
Yes, the akguy.com. You could find out about, more of the, stuff that the rifles that we build, the 50 project, different things like that. And so, yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. And yeah, I just appreciate you guys bringing me on and putting up with me for an hour and 8 minutes.
No, hey, it was a lot of fun.
It,
Actually, it was longer than that because we had about 4 minutes that before this. No,
Oh, even
I'm
worse.
just kidding. No, no, it was a lot of fun. It was a pleasure having you on, and I'm looking forward to. I already started following. I just followed you on Instagram, and I'll probably start looking at you on YouTube, and
I'm very sorry to hear
yeah,
that.
right. But I mean, I'm curious on the 50 project, where that's going to go, and um, see what happens with it. But no, thank you for coming on, and it was a pleasure having you on.
Absolutely. Absolutely, gentlemen.
yeah, it has been a pleasure, and I'm glad you were able to indulge us. And I mean, I've been following you for a couple years now, and
Also sorry to hear that.
yeah. Well, no, but I mean, these.
You used to see the really bad shit then.
Oh, it hasn't been bad. It's been entertaining. Although I did think you were a little bit psychotic when you undertook the AK-50 project, but now I realize that
Probably more than fair.
yeah, now I'm starting to understand that you suffer from that same sort of mild masochism that Andrew and I do, being podcasters. But
Oh, yeah, it's a labor of love. If you're doing it for any other reason, you're actually psychotic.
or horribly misguided.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some people are still holding out hope. Yeah. That's it's definitely a fun space. As long as no matter what you're doing, whether it's podcasting, YouTube, anything, as long as you're having fun with it and it's not affecting anything else, like, dude, go balls to the wall. Who
Mm-hmm.
cares? We all end up in the same box anyway.
I would think that's a good spot to end the show. That's great life advice. Just go balls to the wall. All right, everybody. This has been episode 112 of the Matter of Facts podcast. Our one AK hater in the group has probably had a stroke by now, but that's okay. His wife will resuscitate him.
Good.
Brandon, we got to have you back on some other time.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Anytime.
All right. 112's in the can. We'll talk to everybody in another week. Good night, everybody.
See ya.